I was so grateful, and this guy was a jerk also. I was so grateful that I had been lured out of, Tower 2, and at the same time, I had this horrific survivor's remorse.
Welcome to the Film Hub Off Script podcast, where real stories from our community come to life. The struggles, the breakthroughs, and the work it takes to keep going. We talk about the process, not just the outcome. I'm Lauren, the founder and CEO of the Film Hub, a co-working space, event space, and content creation studio where creativity meets success. My conversation today is with a man who has inspired millions globally and is a renowned mind-body health expert, meditation teacher, and author of several bestsellers. Known for creating the 21-day meditation process, he has produced over 1,000 guided meditations available on various platforms. His methods are utilized in Fortune 500 companies, the military, law enforcement, and he conducts workshops, trainings, and retreats worldwide. We get to do life with this incredible man every day here at the Film Hub, and I want to welcome Davidji. Thank you. Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to dive in a little bit deeper and let listeners know kind of everything of how you've gotten here and the breaking of mental things that you've had to do to get here and all of that. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to this place.
First, let me share with you how grateful I am to be a member of the Film Hub. It's been a joy. I've been here a few years, and it's like home. And I really feel that family. So thank you for creating this amazing space and tractor beaming me into it. And one of the real benefits of being at the Film Hub for me is I do a lot of Zoom calls. I do a lot of work. I'm creating guided meditations every day. I even film my podcast here, the Shadow and the Light podcast with Elizabeth Winkler. So it's so special. It's so multidimensional, and I think I really feel that support. So I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah, and this is the best part of the Film Hub, is getting to be with incredible people like yourself and content creators that want to use it to really make an impact, and that's why you're here, I believe, too. So.
Yeah, yeah. And, one of the really core aspects, I call them sacred values, in my organization is community. And so being part of this community, I'm a part of a lot of different communities, but this community is the one that I show up every single day for and allows me to serve all of my other communities. So thank you for that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, so I started meditating when I was in college. It was an experimental Asian studies course. There were 12 of us. We sat in a circle. It was every Tuesday. I'll always remember that. And our Zen master stood in the corner, and we were instructed every time we had a thought to raise our hand. In his hand, he carried an 18-inch bamboo stick known as a keisaku. So when we raised our hands, he would actually come over to us and thwack us on the back. So I didn't last in that. I ultimately dropped that class. Loved meditation, loved all the benefits I was experiencing, but didn't really want to get hit while I was meditating.
Yeah, I can understand why.
So I left that type of meditation and got into candle gazing, got into mantra and tantra and mindfulness and all these other interesting techniques. And some of them I practiced for years and years, others sometimes for weeks at a time. And I allowed that to really flow into me until I got into the corporate world. But as I got deeper and deeper into the corporate world, I realized I had traded in my morning meditation for an early train ride into the World Trade Center. I worked on the 82nd floor of Tower 2.
Wow.
And I traded in my evening meditation for a nice glass of scotch. And like that, meditation was gone from my life. But also I realized so was balance. And I was for a large part of that time, I was a mergers and acquisitions consultant, advisor to companies. And if you don't know what that is, it's when your company wants to expand or have an exit strategy. You either combine, you merge, you get taken over. Mergers and acquisitions. So I was doing that for a bunch of years. And in the wake of 9/11, I was walking past this row of cardboard boxes that people were living in. And I walked past this particular box, and this hand reached out, pulled me in, grabbed me, pulled me in, so I'm like an inch from this guy with these blue crystalline eyes. I'll never forget this moment. I call these butterfly moments, where suddenly like the world just stops. So in that moment, there was no traffic. I couldn't hear any sounds of the city. There were no people talking or walking. It was just me and this guy gazing into my eyes. And then he said to me, "What's going to be on your tombstone?" It's a fairly reflective moment. And I had been in a place of deep pain and sadness. And prior to 9/11, I was feeling no joy, really feeling empty in the work that I was doing. And when someone asks you what's going to be on your tombstone, in that moment, I started hyperventilating. Ultimately, he released me, and I just staggered away, sat down on some steps of an apartment building, maybe 30 feet away, and tears were streaming down my face. My knees were weak, and it was just one of these like powerful aha moments. Came home, told my wife what had happened, and she said, "You need to quit your job, definitely." And there's this guy, Deepak Chopra. He's doing a meditation retreat in Oxford, England. You should go there and check it out. So I'm fairly obedient, so I did all that, headed off to Oxford. We were meditating for like 8 hours a day. And I was like, this is starting to feel pretty good. This is reminding me of what that used to feel like. And by day 3, I had this sensation of joy, which I had not felt in maybe more than a decade. And meditated, then went to the U.S. Consulate to get a visa, and then flew to India in search of the guru. Searching high and low in search of the guru, went into the Himalayas to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He wasn't there that day. Then I, traveled around. I practiced meditation. I practiced yoga, went to the temples, bathed in the Ganges, did all that kind of stuff in search of the guru. And then after about 5 months, so I had just like really headed off on my own little eat, pray, love journey without the eating and the love, just a lot of prayer. And after about 5 months, I was laying in a hammock in a cashew forest in Kerala, southern India. And I was reading this ancient book, the Bhagavad Gita, which is the original conversations with God. It's like 2,300 years old, supposedly written around 300 BC. And it's the original conversations. The great warrior Arjuna is having conversations with God. And he's like, how am I supposed to live my life? How am I supposed to walk through the world? And I read this one line, chapter 2, verse 48, which starts with Yogastha Kuru Karmani, which means establish yourself in the present moment and then perform action. And that hit me like a lightning bolt. Like, yes, that's how I want to live my life. Getting still and then leaning hard into some type of brilliant action. And so I raced home, if you can race home from India. I raced to the bus station. A bus came about 20 hours later. Then took the bus to Mumbai airport. That was like a 4-day journey. Then waited in the airport for another 20 hours. Then the flight was 22 hours. So like 3 days later, I get home and I'm like, yes, that's what I want to do, just meditate. So after meditating and meditating and meditating and meditating and meditating every single day, my friends come over to my house and they go, this is an intervention. All you do now is sit around and meditate. You don't work, you don't go out with us, you don't hang out, you just meditate. I said, I know, isn't it amazing? I feel so great. They said, well, that thing you told us, Yogasda, Kuru, Karmani, was like, get still and then be brilliant. Not just get still. There's a second part to that. So I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And they said, why don't you learn to teach people to meditate? And I said, I'm from Queens, New York. We don't care about anyone else's meditation. And they said, well, forget the altruistic part, but if you really want to learn something, learn it from the inside, learn to teach it. And they said, your guy Deepak, he's got like a center out in California. And so I was like, all right, I'll check it out. So I signed up for this course, this mind-body healing course. At the time, it was at La Costa in Carlsbad. And it was a 5-day workshop. And they went around the room asking people, what you did. And I said, well, actually, I just meditate. And they're like, well, what did you do before then? I said, I would help companies. I would turn companies around. I would help companies be more profitable. And I don't know, 2 days later, suddenly, on a break, Deepak and his partner, Dr. David Simon, came over to me and they said, we're looking for someone to help turn us around. Since 9/11, no one's really coming here. People aren't flying. And, do you think you could help our organization? And I was like, yeah. They said, would you be our COO? I'm like, done. And then I went back to my hotel room to tell my wife, hey, I just took a job. And she's like, great, where is it? I said, it's here, right here, on the resort. The Chopra Center at the time was on the resort. And she's like, and what are they paying you? And I was like, oh, well, nothing. Nothing. There's nothing at first. I'm just going to help. They have no money. So I'm going to help turn this organization around, and then who knows where that will lead. So that was a pretty wild experience. And I never actually went home for 6 months. I stayed there. And I guess around December, I was like, this free thing's getting a little old. And so I think I need to get paid now. And so they said, oh, you would like to get paid? Absolutely, we can help you with that. So I began a 10-year journey of apprenticing under these two mind-body healers, both physicians, MDs, and that really informed me, of the whole concept of the ancient healing arts of the East combined with modern Western science. There's a fusion there. There's a beautiful fusion. So I began apprenticing under them and running an organization, ran it for a decade. Ultimately, I became the dean of Chopra Center University. And after 10 years, I was like, you know what? I think I'm good here. The organization is thriving. My work here is done. Let me see if I can actually break out on my own and do this, because I want to travel to schools and travel to hospitals and travel the world teaching this stuff. And so I created the Davidji Meditation Academy, began doing that. I was doing a workshop in Carlsbad on the beach, and someone was there, and they said, a friend of mine is one of the people who runs the Dutch Special Forces. Would you come to the Netherlands and teach them? And I was like, done. And then someone else said, hey, by the way, I saw you speak at the Chopra Center 5 years ago, and I work for the Department of Justice, and we're looking for someone to train cops. And I was like, done. And that just started unfolding. And then I got tricked by a friend of mine to go to Camp Pendleton. We were on the beach hanging out, and he's like, come here, come and hang out with us. I've got some friends I'd like to introduce you to. And my hair is pretty scraggly. And by the way, I'm not a stoner surfer. After 9/11, I just made a pact that I would never cut my hair. So here I am. It's fallen out, but I'm not cutting it.
Yeah.
And so I went to Camp Pendleton. I thought I was going just to meet some people, and they had set up a class for a bunch of Marines who had just come home from too many tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I got to teach them to meditate. I didn't use meditation. It was just awareness, mindful performance. In those early years, I had to use a lot of different euphemisms because people in the corporate world and people in law enforcement and the military definitely were not vibing with the concept of meditation. You know, it's a surrender practice, so you can't tell anyone in the military, now surrender.
Yeah.
When they've been trained their whole training. We don't surrender no matter what. So it just started expanding, and I started training people to teach meditation, to really leverage that. And now at this point, I've trained over 1,000 meditation teachers who are out in the world, pretty much in every country. And that's been my calling. And so I figured one of the things that really got me going, you mentioned the 21-day meditation challenge. I started doing that in my first year at the Chopra Center. I would just record 21 days of meditations, and then we'd put them out there. And so I started recording those, and my assistant at the time, she was in a previous incarnation of her, she was George Clooney's stylist, and she was like really connected in Hollywood. And I said, I would love to do voiceover work. I would just love to do that. And she goes, oh, I'm going to LA this weekend. I'll check it out and see, you know, what that world is like. And she came back and she goes, no. 5 people do all the voiceovers for every single thing in Hollywood, every movie. You know, they all start with "in a world where," and so I said, all right, well, I won't do those. I'll dedicate myself to just recording meditations every single day. And so that's what I did. Started recording and recording and recording and recording, and putting them out there on all these different platforms, Apple Music and Amazon and Spotify and Insight Timer and Unplugged Meditation. Suddenly all these platforms, meditation platforms, started coming out and inviting me, can we have some of your meditations? So I was like, yeah, sure, let's do that. And it just became my life, moving in these areas. Started really studying a lot of the science behind the practice, working with a lot of people who had PTSD. And I started exploring the concept of moving from post-traumatic stress to post-traumatic growth. It's a thing. It's actually a thing. And I spent about 10 years studying that and exploring that, as well as trauma-informed mindfulness. So all these techniques, suddenly, I was doing it really for my own benefit. I just wanted to find all that stuff. And then, you know, the market, suddenly people started reaching out to me and saying, you know, I've lost a child to suicide, or we're dealing with grief, or I've been traumatized through, you know, childhood abuse or whatever that is. And so I started finding so many avenues to help people just regulate their nervous system. You know, there's tons of stuff always going on the planet, and we can either argue with it or be for it or against it and all that stuff. But we can't really even have a conversation if we have too much emotional charge that's running our show. And so I figured, let me become, you know, a master of regulating the nervous system, really getting calmer, being the calm amidst the chaos, being the stillness inside the storm, and let me share this with the world. So that's been my mission. That's what I do. I wake up every day, thrilled to do it. How do I share this with? Who can I share this with? Who can I train? Who can I teach? And that led me to the Film Hub.
I want to go back to where you said, where you really found your purpose, and point out you found it and you knew that's what you wanted to do, was just meditate, and it brought back the joy and the happiness in your life. But then it was your community that really pushed you. You need to do this for others.
Right.
Yeah, and how important that community is. And if you didn't have those friends kind of pointing out and redirecting you, like, hey, this is amazing, we love that this happened and worked for you, but how are you going to do this for the world? I mean, that's incredible and so important in our lives. So how does community really impact, you believe?
Well, it reminds me of that Rabbi Hillel quote from around the time of Jesus, which was, if I'm only for myself, who am I? If I'm not for myself, who am I? So if I'm not for myself, who is for me? And if not now, when? So we suddenly start to realize, you can have, if you're just going to sit in a cave and meditate, whatever, who's benefiting from that? You're not even benefiting from that because you're not living. The magic of meditation doesn't happen when your eyes are closed, sitting in the dark. The magic of meditation happens when you're out here in the rest of the world, interacting with people, where you really can help someone who's struggling, support someone who could use a hand. All those different components. Community has been one of my sacred values because I found so much strength and support. The community of the people who pushed me to go to California. And, that was a long time ago, and here I am, a Californian, not a New Yorker anymore. And the community that I found in San Diego, and the community of like-minded people who meditate, and the community of people who are altruistic and want to help and serve. And so I have found in service, that's where all the fulfillment comes from. There's this Japanese concept, ikigai. It has 4 components. 1, do what you love. 2, do what you're good at. 3, do it in service. And the 4th is, and find some way for you to feel fulfilled or rewarded in that. And when those things all converge, because not everything is that, when all those things converge, there's like a pinpoint between all 4 of those areas. And that's true ikigai. And it means waking up to joy. And it means you wake up every single day because you get to do that, live that, be that. And so, some days are, irritating or annoying or hard. Sometimes months are hard. Life is hard. Life's really, really hard. But when you can share these tools and tips and techniques of how to make it easier and more fulfilling with other people, I think that's really where the power comes in. And I'm not saying every New Yorker is selfish. I was. I'll just go on the record. I was. But perhaps, even in that, I was just thinking too small. And I think, now I interact with people around the world in so many different cities and countries, and seeing when someone says to me, oh, I taught my first meditation class, they graduated from the training, or I've been meditating with you for 5 years, and you've helped me through some really difficult or challenging times. Those are the things. It's like, well, that's why I do it. Not that I'm hanging on every single review, because some people are haters, and haters going to hate. So I get sometimes mean reviews. On Amazon, there's one review where this person, is just saying, your book sounds like, I don't like your dad, and I don't like you, and you are doing this. And I'm like, my dad? And then I explored it further, and they thought that I was Deepak Chopra's son. So, so I was like, that's your issue. That has nothing to do with me. My dad's amazing. And so, community is very, very important to me. Creativity is really important. You have created this content creation space, and that's really what I am. I'm creating content every single day. And when someone says to me, what's going to be on your tombstone? Well, that's what's going to be on my tombstone. I created a ripple, or at least I continued some ripple from the divine, and that flows into other people, and they tell 2 friends, and they tell 2 friends, and suddenly people are calmer. I mean, can you imagine what this planet would be like if just 1 million people right now meditated or just took a breath?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people feel that if we can create these communities, there's the Greater Good School in UC Berkeley, where they have done studies that people meditating, not in the same room, but in different parts of the world, there's something, oxytocin and dopamine and all these other hormones and chemicals that are nourishing to us, boost the immune system and do all these other aspects, healing aspects and nourishing aspects. So we know that, the science has now caught up with the practice that's been going on for 10,000 years. And Harvard has done all these studies. Dr. Sarah Lazar with the Harvard Medical Center, University of Massachusetts, Mass General, they have done all these MRI studies on your brain. What happens when you meditate for 8 weeks in a row? And amazing things happen. There's actual structural changes to the physical brain.
Yeah. And
we begin to heal. And so if you have a childhood trauma, start to meditate. It will begin to heal. If you have physiologically, maybe you've been diagnosed with something, you can boost your immune system and you can return to the memory of your wholeness. If you've got emotional challenges or you've been dumped or treated unkindly by some people, meditation can actually help you do that. So physiologically, emotionally, spiritually. So I've tapped into all these different communities of people who want that. And maybe they didn't know they wanted meditation, but they just wanted to feel better in that moment, and then they get to do that. So it was just a gift that I spent so many years in the corporate world, in the business world, and I got to merge that with these ancient wisdom teachings on how to live a better life, a more purposeful life.
Yeah. I love it. There's a few things I want to dive into. One was, you said you thought small. How did you start thinking big? What transitioned in your life to kind of, elevate you up to that area?
I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew what I didn't want. And I was working in a role that I thought I was pretty good at, but I wasn't really working with people that I liked. I wasn't working with people who liked me. There was no community there. It was, if you brought someone a coffee that was less than the perfect temperature, they got fired that day. So I didn't want to work in that kind of environment. It was harsh. There are probably a trillion other businesses that I could have, gone. But the world of finance at that time was pretty bottom line results. No time for idle chit chat. So I knew I didn't want that. And my heart was grieving. This concept, I worked on the 82nd floor of Tower 2, and it was just 3 months before 9/11 that I was invited, my partner and I, we were invited to join this other company. They dangled all these millions of dollars of stock options that never actualized, but they lured us away. So here I was in this fairly interesting dichotomy. I was so grateful, and this guy was a jerk also. I was so grateful that I had been lured out of, Tower 2, and at the same time, I had this horrific survivor's remorse. And, juggling that and balancing that, because everybody who worked on Tower 2 on the 82nd floor died that day. But here I was working for someone who I considered an ogre and not a very nice person, but they had saved my life, So I think everything is a co-creation. Co-creation between individuals energetically, and a co-creation with the divine or the universe or God, whatever you want to, however you want to attribute that. So I knew what I didn't want, and that was enough. It was like, when Forrest Gump just stops running, that was like, think I'll stop running. So I was like, think I'll stop. And that created infinite possibilities. And I think I believe that between our breaths, between what comes in and what goes out, there's a space. And we get to choose. The Austrian philosopher, psychologist, Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl actually said, in between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space rests our ability to choose. In that choice lies our growth and our freedom. So I know that through meditation, if we can just slow down our world just a little bit And the world comes to me in slow motion now. I've trained my nervous system to allow it to do that. But if we could just slow down and lengthen that space between, we'll make more conscious choices. And so at the time, I didn't know it. I didn't know that meditation was going to be my path, but I knew that stepping away from something that just did not serve me and did not nourish me, that was the first step. That was the first step. So could I then step into a place of infinite possibilities where I have no idea what do I want to do, and let me say yes to every opportunity that unfolds. So there was an opportunity to go to California to go to a mind-body healing course. I was like, yes. Someone said to me, hey, would you like to work for us? Yes, on day one. Because you can always quit. You can always say, I changed my mind. People change their mind all the time. As long as we change it with grace and kindness, then sure, and compassion. But that's what I started doing. I started just saying yes to everything. And then I became a little more discerning and saying, because when I first left that world of the Chopra Center and went out on my own, I also said yes to everything. People were like, can you please come to South Carolina and lead a sunrise meditation? I'm like, I'm on it. Yeah. And then I realized, well, it just cost me like $500 to fly there and another $500 to stay overnight. That was, how long can I keep doing that, saying yes to everything? So then I started to be a little more discriminating and say, okay, let me say yes to things that support my values. So I think it's important to get clear on your vision as an entrepreneur or as a company, as a human. I believe emphatically in personally and professionally rebranding every single day, every day. You know, so the Film Hub continues to do that. You know, what a great space this is. I've never sat in this room before, and I've been here for a couple of years. So I think, you know, we have that opportunity to brand ourselves, rebrand ourselves over and over and refine, moving more towards the things that really nourish us and really serve us. And so I'm always asking, you know, how can I help, heal, and serve others using what I love to do? How do I do that? How do I make that happen? And I'm a big fan of living a purpose-driven life, living with intention. So I invite intentions into my meditation. I wake up with an intention every single day. I have themes for the month. And these are things I learned over time. I didn't know all this at first. It all started, though, with just saying yes. And then saying yes, and then really asking, all right, here I am in this sacred, precious, present moment. What will I do with it today that will add value to the world and to myself? You know, if we just add value to the world, but we're not nourishing ourselves, we learn to resent everybody that we're serving. You know, this is why caregivers, even at the highest level, you know, we see like who's the most sarcastic people. A lot of times it's doctors and nurses, because they're seeing, you know, so much death and destruction and annoying people. Meanwhile, didn't you sign up for that? Didn't you sign up to help all those annoying people and help them heal? So, but if we really are nourishing ourselves. And why is this happening to the medical profession? Because these people are burnt out. They're fried. They've been fried after they didn't get a vacation 5 years ago. And so I think that we have to, you know, the ancient wisdom teachings really remind us we have to take care of ourselves. And then we can serve the world. And if you're just serving, you will run out of gas, collapse, and then you can serve nobody. So self-care isn't selfish, it's beautiful, it's spectacular. And so I had to learn all these things on the way, because you know, I think I worked my first year, I didn't take a break that first year, not one day off. And then the next year, after that year of yes, I chose the year of no. So no matter what anyone asked me, I'm like, no. And then I realized, well, I just turned down so many great opportunities. Maybe I should, somewhere in the middle. I could be a little more rational about that. But I think that not everyone hears a calling. I didn't. But a calling is always there. You're being summoned by something bigger than you. A lot of times we're either not paying attention, or we haven't quieted the mind enough to even allow that whispered voice that's in our heart or coming from somewhere to really speak to us. And I think that's the thing. I think everyone's being called. Everyone's being summoned. But there's a lot of noise in this world. Certainly with social media. And life is hard, it's challenging. So as I really started to cultivate a daily practice of slowing down and connecting to that stillness and silence, I was actually able to hear those voices. No, not crazy people voices, real voices, the voice that was inviting me. Hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you step into your power? Why don't you own your impact? You say you like this? Well, why don't you do it? Why don't you lean a little bit harder than just saying, I like it, but I'm not going to get committed. And so I think that can be a very, very important understanding. Joseph Campbell, maybe 70 years ago, talked about this concept of the hero's journey. And we know it's in everything. It goes back to the most ancient tales, Ulysses, the Odyssey, the Iliad. But it's also in Star Wars. It's also in the Marvel universe. It's in all the superhero things. The hero's journey. In every single hero's journey, it's a 3-part journey. There's a departure, then there's an initiation, and then there's the return. You could apply that to Spider-Man, Black Panther, pick it. Whatever it is, it's in this concept of the hero's journey. In that first phase, the departure phase, the hero always receives a calling and always resists. Every great hero in every story at first goes, oh, no, now's not the right time. No, not me. Who am I? Imposter syndrome, all those things. But then the hero ultimately steps into their power and begins the journey. And so, look at the Film Hub. We could apply this to all of us, even the camera people, all of that. We've all sensed the calling, not now, simmer down a little bit, and then we've succumbed to it. But you can only do that from a quiet space, whether that's contemplative prayer, whether that's meditation, whether that's just watching a sunset, whether that's just being in nature, whether that's just the joy of kids or loved ones. Those are the moments where suddenly things become crystal clear. But a lot of people are just too busy getting stuff done to even tap into that. So, I don't know. Did that answer that question?
Yeah, I love that. And a lot, I can resonate so much with it too. And I even remember times at the hub where, you do your first part, right? You open the first location and then things start happening in your life. And then you're like, no, it's not right. It's not the right time to expand this and to move. And there was moments where I had that reflection with me. And I remember you would come down the stairs and you're like, I see you, come here. And I wouldn't have to say anything. And you would pull me into that office and you would say, whatever's going on. And you would breathe and you would talk to me about whatever was going on and you would flip the perspective. And you're like, would you have gotten to this place if so didn't happen? So be grateful and flip that perspective of gratitude, because you wouldn't be here without all of that. And that's why I love this community so much, because I have these moments where, people like yourself and other of our members have, and I don't even say anything, half the time, but we all have struggles and we all grow through major shifts in our lives and major changes and disruptions that do take us out of our calling, or it puts a complete halt and pause. Right. And just like it happened with your community, your friends had to pull you out and be like, what are you doing? Right. And I think we all kind of get that. And I know you also reminded me too, you were like, all of those things that have happened to you in your life you're not defined by that either. And those things, you're going to be defined by the multiple locations that you have in the future. And you would just remind me of that. And it's just shifting your brain and shifting your thought process and what you've been through to stop focusing on those negatives and shift it into, I wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for those things. So you've even impacted me in that way. And I haven't even gotten a chance to really work, as, having you as a coach or a meditation instructor, and just those things that you walk by somebody and you notice those.
Right. Well, that is also the beauty of community. And that's why, I believe that we should pivot. I pivoted very hard when COVID came, because I was always on a plane, always in a room talking to people, and I believe that this whole process that unfolded during COVID of people not going into the office, I think it was very destructive to moments like that. A lot of people say, yes, well, so no one's hanging around the water cooler anymore. But probably over the course of a day, you and I cross paths, 20 times. And you're doing that with every single person who's here. And that's where creativity is born. And that's where opportunity is born. And that's why we get that scenario. And yes, we can hang out enough in the same space where we start to entrain each other. And my philosophy is highest vibration always wins, which means that if someone is in a good space and someone's not in a good space, if they just hang out long enough, the person who's not in a good space will be elevated, because highest vibration always wins. They've done scientific studies on this, that if we hang out in this room, for the next 5 days and never leave it, ultimately our hearts will have a coherency. Our hearts will be beating exactly the same, and we'll be breathing exactly the same. And so imagine the power of us just being in that space. And sometimes we need someone who's not in it so deeply as we are, who just to remind us, just take a breath, just step back a bit, just look what you've created here. You didn't create it from a place of fear. You didn't create it from a place of desperation. You created it from love.
Yeah.
You just need to get back to that space of love, because it's easy for us to get stuck in fear, sadness, madness, desperation, and just get pulled down by that.
Yeah, I agree. What you do, how is it so different, or how is it different? Because I know you work with a lot of people with trauma and that have been through some things, especially with the military and police force. How is your practices different from therapy?
Yeah, well, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a therapist. I always begin everything with that. I've just spent a lot of time with a lot of people who have struggled in life. And I believe that the ancient wisdom traditions have so much deep knowledge that can inform us, even though they existed before TikTok and iPhones and all that other stuff. But it allows me to speak to people where they are without the hierarchy of therapist, patient, or client, or doctor, patient. And whenever I'm interacting with someone, it's as a peer, which allows there to be pure empathy. If we think that, I'm here and someone else is down here, there can be no empathy. There really can't even be compassion. There can be pity. You pass by somebody who's struggling on the street, living on the street or begging, and you could view them in a whole bunch of different ways. But if you say to yourself, there for the grace of God go I, and someone, we live in San Diego, we got born on this side of the border, someone else is born on the other side of the border. If we just have that understanding inside of us, then compassion can bloom. If we can see ourselves as equals, then compassion can bloom. So all of I call it spiritual warrior coaching, is the coaching that I do.
I love that.
And it's really talking about, it's a combination of teacher. It's a combination of therapist, and I'll put quotes around that since I'm not a certified therapist in any way. It's a combination of friend. It's all those things, really trying to get to that place where there can be just pure empathy between the two people. And that allows, here's what I'm thinking. It doesn't mean I'm right. I have an opinion. I have an idea. Talk to me about where you're struggling. Talk to me about what this is. Maybe I've been there. And maybe I haven't. And if I haven't, I probably know someone or lots of people who have had that. And I've spent so much time with people in trauma over the years. Dr. David Simon, who one of the co-founder of the Chopra Center, who I apprenticed under for a bunch of years, he would invite me, of course, with his patients' permission, to just sit in on his sessions. He was a brilliant, brilliant neurologist and therapist. And, most of the time people would say, no, I'm not letting this person sit in there. But a lot of times they would. And over 10 years, hundreds of times, I actually got to witness his process in real time with someone going through some kind of challenge. And so we're all going to go through stuff. But the stuff that binds us and the stuff that strengthens us and the stuff that gives us the courage is beneath that. It's the ground upon which we stand. So that's really what I do in all of my coaching, is just reminding people, what is the ground upon which you stand? What holds your stars apart and your universe together? There was actually a term, 5,000, 7,000 years ago in the ancient Vedic teachings, was called Dri, D-H-R-I, Dri. It was actually considered like a force of nature, like gravity. But it was the thing that held the stars apart, pushing them into infinity, and simultaneously wrapped its arms around the galaxy, holding everything together. So imagine a force that was pushing towards infinity and yet holding a container, a safe container. And so that's what I try to remind people. What's your Dri? What is holding your stars apart and your universe together? And I think once people can reconnect to that mindset and that heart set and that soul shift inside of them, suddenly there's an epiphany. It's like, whoa, now I remember. We return to the memory of our emotional wholeness, and we return back to what's the ground upon which I stand. What matters to me? What are my priorities? What are my agenda items? What are my sacred values? And I think from there, it's like, all right, well, this is going on now. This too shall pass.
Thank you so much, David. I so appreciate just being with you, living life with you here at the Hub, and getting to know you so well, and to see all your strengths that you have, and the areas in your life where you have been a fantastic example of shifting mindsets and just getting quiet and making an impact. And I hope I can make one day just as much of an impact as you make.
I wrote this book called Sacred Powers, and one of those powers is the sacred power of your ripple, and you are rippling. So you are doing it. You're doing it, times 50 every single day. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you greatly. So where can people find you on your social medias?
On Instagram, I'm Davidji Meditation. On Facebook, I think I'm just Davidji, or maybe Flow of Love. It's been a while since I set up that account. But you can just visit davidji.com, and that will take you to my meditation academy, and that'll bring you to hundreds of free guided meditations as well.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And for more information, be sure to follow us on your favorite platforms here at the Film Hub Inc. and visit our website at thefilmhubinc.com.
The Film Hub, where creativity meets success.